Welcome again. We'll start with the NCERT class 7, the 6th chapter that talks about towns, traders and craft person. Now this chapter exclusively focuses on the concept of temple towns that came up during that time. So what was the idea was basically there were towns coming up because of certain reasons. So if there were artists living in a particular region, there were artist town coming up, as we saw the Bidri art brought in the Bidar town in Karnataka. So you had the various towns based on the arts that came up in the country. Then the next type of towns that came up were the administrative town. These were basically by the governance that was there. So Thanjavur, as we saw, was the capital of Chola kingdom located at Kaveri river, and here you had the Raja Rajeshwar temple that we talked about in the last class, and how with the sloping architecture you had the top shikara that was built. This temple had many mandaps and it was a kind of barrack for the army during that time. In this temple, in this city, water mainly came through wells. So well was the main source, and for the local people who were mainly weavers of the caste of Saliyar, they made clothes which were used for the various temples. So that was one of the major works in this Thanjavur city. Again you had Swami Malai temple. The Swami Malai, you had various bronze idols that were seen and the bell metal that was seen. Now bronze and bell metal, what is the basic difference between the two? When we talk about bronze, it's a composition of tin and copper. Bell metal is again a composition of tin and copper. However, tin is much more as compared to copper. As a result, when it rings, it produces a bell-like sound, and hence it is known as bell metal. So you have the bell metal and the bronze idols that were seen. Now what is the concept of temple towns? Now in the model, as you can see, we have here, you have a kind of temple that is being established, and around the temple you have the various economic activities that slowly flourish up. So you have cities coming up near the temple area. Now the temple itself had enough wealth that could finance the trade and the banking activity in the nearby areas. The land was given as grant for the rituals, and this money was carried on to the nearby areas for development work. Again the temple showed the demonstration power of the king. So therefore the temples at that time became the center, and there were temple towns that were coming up similar to the administrative town and the artistic towns as we have seen. So some of the examples of the temple town during that time were Thanjavur, Bilaswami, that is Bhilas or Vidisha in Madhya Pradesh, Somnath in Gujarat, Kanchipuram and Madurai in Tamil Nadu, Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh. So these were some of the temple towns that came up. Besides these temple towns, there were big townships coming up as pilgrimage centers. So Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, you have Tiruvannamalai in Tamil Nadu, Ajmer in Rajasthan. Now Ajmer is unique because Ajmer has a kind of pilgrimage center for both Hindus and Muslims. So you have the Pushkar temple in Ajmer, and then you have the Khwaja Muniuddin Chisti's Dargah that is again present in Ajmer. So it's a kind of Chauhans were there till 12th century, and after that you had Mughal invasion, so you had the Mughals there. Now we will talk about one of the very interesting concept of making the sculptures or making the statues during that time. So statues were made with a technique which was known as lost wax technique. What happened under that technique was, for example, I have to build this statue of Ganesh. What would be done is a similar statue with wax would be made, and that wax statue would be coated with clay. Now this would be heated in the oven. So this clay would get hardened and the inside wax would melt. Now towards the bottom you would prick in a small hole, and you would have all the liquid wax that would flow out. From that hole itself you would pour in the the liquid form of the metal, and then you would cool it down. So what would happen is that metal would solidify over the time period, and then you would have the clay layer, and you would break down that clay layer and remove it, and then you would have a metal sculpture like this that would be seen. So you would have a kind of structure that would be built, and this technique of casting out statues during that time was known as lost wax technique and is very, very important. Now next comes the trade. Now trade usually happened from a small village to a bigger village, and from a bigger village to town and then to cities. Now when it comes to trade, you had the mandis that were established. These mandis were also known as mandapikas, and you had the local hart market which was known as the market street during that time. Now what were the common commodities that were traded? So you had horse, salt, camphor, saffron, betel nut and various spices that were traded. Then you had the zamindars who were working around in the towns and the cities, who built the strong towns. They levied taxes on the traders and they gave the temples the right to collect the taxes. Now traders travelled in caravans in groups, and these groups were known as guilds. Now some of the common guilds were Manigramam and Nanadesi. So these were the two common guilds during that time. Now who were the major traders during that time? The major traders were Chetiyars and Marwadi Oswals, and then you had Hindu Baniyas and Muslim Bohras that were seen. So you had traders from most of the communities. And what was the trade during that time? From India it was mainly the textile and the spices that went, and from the foreign countries you had gold and ivory from Africa, spices, tin, Chinese blue pottery and silver from Southeast Asia and China, and the spices that we supplied was a kind of delicacy for the European cooking. Then you had Kabul and Gandhar which were linked to the Silk Route, and the trade on this Silk Route was carried on by horses. Now some of the common craft during that time, as we talked about the Bidri art, this Bidri art was known in the town of Bidar in Karnataka, and it was mainly the copper work and the silver work vessels. Again you had the Panchalas and the Vishwakarma community. They were mainly goldsmith, bronzesmith and blacksmiths. You had weavers from Saliyar and Kalai Kolar community. Then you had in the West Bengal you had Murshidabad, which was located on Bhagirathi river, and it was the center for silk during that time and again the capital of Bengal. Later on Murshidabad totally declined because of the cheap mills coming up by England and you had the cheap cloth that was imported. Now when it comes to architecture, we would be talking about three major cities. The first is Hampi, the second is Surat and the last is Machilipatnam. Now Hampi is a very interesting of those, because the Hampi's construction, there was no use of cement or mortar. And how did they build up the structures so giant? So they built up the structures by interlocking the bricks. So the only way of building up the structures was interlocking. There was no cement or mortar that was used. So that's very, very important. They had numerous arches and domes that were seen and gardens. Now most of the community that was seen here were trading community, which were Moors who were Muslim merchants. Then you had Chettis and Portuguese. Now you had numerous temples, mainly the Shiva temples where you had Mahanavami and Ramnavami that was celebrated in the south. Then this Hampi was a center till the time of Vijayanagar Empire or the Vijayanagar dynasty. Later on, with the Deccan Sultans coming in from Golconda, Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Berar and Bidar, you had the decline of Hampi that started. The next was Surat. Surat was an emporium of western trade. It had a numerous diversity of trading products, mainly from the Mughal architecture. It was known as gateway of trade for West Asia, also known as gateway to Makkah. You had numerous Portuguese, Dutch and English people who came in with establishing factories and warehouses there. So textile was common, zari work was taking place. You had various Mahajans and money exchangers that were present there. Now the most important thing was Surat was renowned across the globe during that time for the Surat hundis. Now hundis are the exchange notes that a person offer as a deposit to another person, and those hundis could be exchanged. So it's a kind of significant note that you are providing as the amount you are exchanging. So it's a recorded deposit of what you are exchanging, and this Surat hundis were accepted till Egypt, Iraq and Belgium. So Surat was a well-known trading town during that time. However, during the 17th century it declined because East India Company shifted the capital from Surat to Mumbai. So therefore there was a decline in the activities in Surat. The next is Masulipatnam or Machilipatnam. It was established during the 17th century on the delta of Krishna river. You had Dutch and East India Company that first came and took control over it. It was one of the major ports of Golconda Kingdom, and you had a Dutch fort that was built. However, the Golconda rulers tried to impose monopoly over trade. This was not accepted by East India Company, and there was competition occurring between the Persians, the Telugu Chettis and the European traders. Later on, Golconda was annexed by Aurangzeb, and European started to look for other places to establish. However, during this time there were many new towns that were coming up. So 16th and 17th century saw numerous towns which were unique, known for spices, known for textiles that came up. East India Company was led by English, French and Dutch. However, you had Indian traders like Gafoor and Vora who were trying to compete with the European companies during that time. But out of these, East India Company or English emerged as the most successful company. You had weavers, and then during the 18th century, Bombay, Madras and Calcutta became the major center for the trade and the major port areas. These areas had black towns where the original weavers were moved, and you had the white rulers who occupied the forts or the major centers. So you had the Fort George in Madras and St. William's in Calcutta were the major ports for the whites during that time, the major centers. Now comes the discovery. There were two major discoverers during that time, Vasco da Gama and Columbus, the Christopher Columbus. Vasco da Gama, who was a Portuguese sailor, he reached Calicut in India for the first time, and he started from Lisbon. The route that he followed was this. And finally, when he returned back through Africa, and later on you had the Dutch and the French sailors who also came into India. Now comes Columbus. The route of Columbus was very interesting. Columbus took 4 voyages. The first voyage he took was till the Caribbean island. However, in the first voyage he did not do anything significant. During his second voyage, he brought in around 1500 people, and he tried to establish a colony in Caribbean island. During his third visit, he reached the port of South Africa and Venezuela, and in his last visit, he reached the coast of, not the North America, the Central America. So during his last visit, he reached Central America. So he made 4 voyages, and finally he discovered the people who appeared as Indians, but they were finally Red Indians from the West Indies region. And later on, people from Spain and Portugal again tried to reach here. So this was about the Columbus discovery of America. Important to note was Columbus never visited North America. He first visited the Caribbean islands. In his third trip, he visited South America, Venezuela region, and in his last trip, he visited the parts of Central America. So with this we cover the 6th chapter of History NCERT Class 7. We will be covering further chapters in the upcoming lectures. So stay tuned for further updates. Have a good day ahead.